In the ancient forests of India, a baby quail lay in its nest. Its wings had not yet grown into anything capable of lifting it. Its legs had not yet developed into anything that could carry its weight against the ground. Its parents were away somewhere in the wider forest at the exact moment the situation most required them to be otherwise. The quail was alone with the complete facts of its situation. No wings, no feet, no parents, no capacity for any response except being present in the nest where it already was. It lay in this situation and inhabited it completely because there was no other position available to inhabit, and the total absence of other options produced a quality of presence that better-equipped circumstances rarely make so entirely inevitable. The fire came without announcement. Dry forests do not negotiate with fire, and fire does not slow for the small things in its path. The other creatures moved without hesitation. Ground animals finding the direction away from what was coming and going there with everything available to them. The forest emptied in the urgent, particular way it empties when what is coming leaves no survivable position in its path. In the nest, the baby quail lay still. It had no direction to move in. The stillness was not courage, not resignation, not the product of any practice or accumulated wisdom. It was simply the only position the facts allowed, inhabited fully because there was nowhere else to inhabit. The fire reached the part of the forest where the nest was. The heat arrived before the flame, the way it always arrives, as a warning that has already come too late to be useful as a warning. The quail looked at what was coming and did the only thing available to it. It spoke, not a cry for rescue, not a prayer organized around hope, not a bargain offered to any force that might be listening. The quail had none of these available, and it knew this with complete clarity. What it had was only what was completely and verifiably the case, and it named this with the plainness of something that has nothing to protect and nothing to add.
I have no wings to carry me from here. I have no feet to run. My parents are not here.
The fire stopped. It reached the edge of something it could not cross and held there. A circle of ground around the nest remained unburned. The forest around it burned completely. The circle held. The texts say this circle remained visible in the forest for many years after the fire had passed. A place where the ground had not burned when everything surrounding it had. Left behind by a creature with nothing to offer except the complete and sincere account of its own small existence. What the circle marked was not achievement. It was not the outcome of a being who had prepared well or arrived with impressive spiritual resources. It was the trace of total sincerity of a creature that looked at the fire and named, without addition or subtraction, exactly what was actually the case about itself in that moment. The act had no strategy in it. There was no calculation about approach or leverage, no wisdom assembled from experience about how best to meet this particular kind of difficulty. There were no available options, and the complete absence of options is exactly what made the sincerity so entire, because sincerity of this quality does not arise from virtue alone. It arises when there is nothing left to put between oneself and the plain truth of one's own situation. The quail was not performing. It was not reaching for an outcome. It was doing the only thing available. Naming what was actually the case, without addition, without subtraction, without the slightest gap between the truth and the speaking of it. The act was the situation itself, made audible. And what is made audible with that quality of completeness carries a power that nothing assembled for the purpose of producing power can generate. The tradition this story comes from holds a specific teaching that a sincere declaration of what is genuinely true, one's actual nature, one's genuine situation, one's honest account of what is real right now, without addition or omission, has a power that deliberate effort cannot produce through any other means. Because something completely sincere, completely without agenda, completely identical with the situation it names, participates in what is real in a way that what is assembled for effect does not. The tradition calls this an act of truth. It appears across many canonical stories, always as a last resort, always in a moment of complete helplessness. Always with the same structure. I am what I am. I have what I have. By the power of this truth, let the outcome be what this truth makes possible. Think about what this does not require of you. It does not require accomplishment. It does not require years of accumulated practice or sufficient readiness before the act becomes available. It requires only that you be what you actually are in the situation you actually inhabit. Naming this honestly and completely, without the additions the mind places around honest self-accounting. Your situation as it genuinely stands. Your capacity as it genuinely is. The truth of where you are right now, offered without modification. The quail offered its incapacity with total sincerity. That was the whole of what it had. The circle stood for years in the forest. Something that helpless, that unaccomplished, that entirely without resources, except the willingness to name what was true, left a mark that outlasted the fire and many seasons after. There may be something you have been waiting to offer until you are more prepared. Some way of showing up. Some act of honesty or presence or care postponed until you feel more certain of what you carry. The quail could not wait for the wings. The fire was already arriving. What it had in that moment was what the moment required. And what made it sufficient was the completeness of the offering, not the quality of what was offered. The circle was not made by readiness. It was made by presence so complete that the fire found nothing to enter through. You are already here. This has never been nothing. The version of you in this moment, with whatever remains unresolved. Whatever feels unfinished, whatever has not yet become what you imagined it should, whatever about you still seems inadequate to the life you are trying to inhabit, is the real version. The only version that exists. It is already present, already real, already enough to name what is true and let that naming do what it does. The circle has always been available to you. It is not reserved for the accomplished or the healed or the sufficiently prepared. It is built from the same simple material the quail had, the honest, complete, unguarded presence of whatever you actually are in this specific, unrepeatable moment, without waiting for better circumstances to make the offering feel more adequate. Stay in that. Let it settle into wherever it needs to settle. The fire has already found its edge.